The Magic organized play structure is a confusing mess. Hello Magic fans, welcome to the MTG Minute. I'm your host, Matt Regine. The show today is brought to you by EC Hipstar Games, my store where I buy and sell Magic cards. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, eBay, and TCG Player. And if you like the show, let me remind you to go ahead and like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. New thing with this season is that the episodes will be coming out randomly as I have time and or inspiration. So go ahead and subscribe and you'll get a notification every time a new episode comes out. Today's episode, as referenced by the opening, is about the Magic organized play structure. The episode comes on the heels of the first split weekend of round-robin play between the MPL and the Rivals Leagues. If you followed that at all, the MPL plays against other MPL players, the Rivals League against other Rivals players, and they earn points towards their end-of-season standings. Now, if you're like me, you might be wondering what those end-of-season standings count for. Well, luckily for you, I took about 2 hours the other day and tried to figure that out. So what I did find out is that the MPL players, the top 4 I believe, retain their MPL status. The rest of them play in a series of gauntlets at the end of the season. There's an MPL gauntlet, a Rivals gauntlet, and a Challenger gauntlet. And depending on how you place, how the players place, I'm not in it, depending how the players would place in those, it determines what league they're going to be playing at next season. And depending if they're playing in the MPL or the Rivals League, there is quite a difference in the contract money that the players are paid. The season standings also do count for the World Championships next year, whereas the top 4 in the MPL go to the World Championship, along with the top 2 from the MPL Gauntlet, the top 4 from the Rivals League, the winner of the Rivals Gauntlet, the top 4 from the Challenger Gauntlet, and the World Champion from last year to make 16 people in this year's World Championship. Are you confused yet? I am. And I'm looking at it. And this kind of brings us to the general topic of today's episode, which is that the Magic organized play structure is a confusing mess. Just so you know, the topic for this episode was kind of inspired by a couple different podcasts, the Arena Decklist podcast and the Bash Brothers podcast, both of which in the last couple of weeks have talked about the pro structure, how it's changed from the classic structure, and really just how confusing it is. So, as you may or may not know, the pro structure was changed in 2018, where points would be tracked throughout the season from things like Grand Prix and Pro Tours, which used to be a thing. These were changed into Players Tours, which I think were changed into Mythic Championships. We just had a Mythic Grand Final, I believe. Or maybe it's just a Grand Final. I don't know. Again, it's really confusing. So anyway, the current structure that we have, I'm going to look at my notes for this because it's confusing, is that with each set, we're going to have a split round robin between the leagues, where points are given towards the end of season standings, and then there's also going to be a championship, so we'll have the Zendikar Rising Championship coming up in December, where the top 8-ish, depending on record, qualify for the Challenger Gauntlet, which again gives the opportunity to possibly make it to one of the leagues next year, or make it to the World Championships. And that's enough of trying to explain how the organized play structure works, because I'm pretty sure by now you probably get the point that it's confusing if you haven't looked into it yourself and tried to rip your hair out previously trying to figure that out. Now that we've established how confusing the thing is, I do have some ideas to fix it. I don't just want to sit back and complain about how bad it is, because there are plenty of people that can do that. I do have some ideas to fix it. The main thing I think we need to take into account when hopefully overhauling the pro structure is we need to make it simplified. it needs to be simple enough that somebody who maybe isn't even necessarily familiar with the game itself can understand the structure of possibly going for the championship. Another thing I think we should establish is how your average player might be able to get to the Pro League without jumping through the hoops of a set championship qualifier, a set championship, a challenger gauntlet, and possibly a league thing then. So one of the ideas that I would like to put forward is something that would look quite a bit like the old pro structure. In the structure that I hypothetically came up with, there are 6 pro tours, maybe one for each set. Let's say they happen every couple months. And at these pro tours, the players that are playing in them can accumulate pro points. At the end of each season, which could end in December, could end in June, whatever Wizards feels is most appropriate, the top 16 players would be your new MPL. Those are the big pro players that get the contracts for the next year. Those are also the 16 players that would compete for the World Championship for that year, one of them obviously being crowned the World Champion. What this would do is actually give us some real stakes in the set championships, as the pro players are actually trying to accumulate points for that contract next year, along with the invite to the World Championships, instead of these round-robin structures that don't really mean anything, and the set championships that, again, are going to reward points, but only the top 4 in the MPL actually go anywhere, so I really don't see how that honestly matters, for the most part, for them. Lastly, it increases the entertainment value, as every month or two, depending what Wizards would hypothetically choose, we are able to watch our favorite pro players as they battle for points towards getting into that World Championship, where they can be crowned the World Champion for the next year. Another thing I think we need to keep in mind is to make a clear structure for how your average player could get to this Pro Tour. And this is another area that I think we should take from some previous Pro structures, where I believe that what we should do is keep our current Grand Prix structure when Magic Fests are allowed to come back. And I think we could take our top maybe 2 players for each tournament of that size and give them an invite to the next Pro Tour to compete with the MPL players from the prior year. I think this also leaves open some opportunity for some of these other side tournaments, like possibly the Red Bull Untapped tournaments, DreamHack, maybe the Star City tournaments. Alright, and finally, my last idea for something that we just need to clean the game up. One of the recent things that happened the last couple of weeks, I believe at the Mythic Finals, was that some players drew into the tournament, or into the top 8 of the tournament. I think we need to get rid of draws completely, whether they be intentional draws, or draws at the end of a tournament. What I would propose is putting a match timer, much the same way that we have on Arena. Also find a way to make that work in Tabletop, so that when somebody would go to time, they do lose the match. This would take out penalties for slow play, as a player could take as long as they want on a specific turn, if it's an overly complicated turn, as long as they can keep it under maybe, say, the half hour or whatever Arena has, and keep the game moving that way. I see no problem with it. Another thing I think we need to do away with is buys in tournaments. For the entertainment value of the viewer at home, I think the best thing to do is have, especially your favorite players, playing as many matches as possible. You don't see any football teams getting buys based on their records. I think this is something we need to keep in mind, especially as of today, Hasbro's announced that esports is going to be one of the pillars of what they're hoping to do with their brand going forward. So that's kind of what I'm thinking as far as the tournament structure, and I think ways we could improve it and really improve organized play to make it better for the players, both the pro and the average players, and just make it a better experience for the viewer at home. If you have other ideas, feel free to either tweet or comment on the YouTube. Also, if you think I've got some good ideas here, please feel free to drop a line to Wizards. Just be respectful, please. And again, thanks for watching. If you like the show, go ahead and like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for the notifications. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time, which is actually going to be tomorrow. I've got another idea for a quick show, so I will see you tomorrow with a more MTG Finance focused show.